Thanks for stopping by Big Top Gaming. My name's Brian, and in this video, I wanted to take some time to go over the House Bolton Tactics deck. I don't think I've been as excited for this release in A Song of Ice and Fire as I have been for much else. I think the Free Folk Hero Box with Mag and 1-1 were something that I was really excited to see, but I think that the Bolton release maybe bumps that above. I have always wanted to see something happen in the game where these neutrals kind of gain their own identity, because they are not, like, especially the Boltons, they're not, I feel like, even though they were a little bit like flip-floppy in terms of who they supported and what their real kind of goal was throughout the story, I still think they were quite deserving of their own thing instead of just being kind of cast off as common mercenaries. So I think I'm super stoked to see that this type of thing is happening in the game. So let's go ahead and get right into their tactics deck. The first card we flip over is going to be Remorseless Examples. This triggers after a friendly unit completes a melee attack. If the attack destroyed an enemy rank, target one other enemy in long range of that enemy. They become panicked. If this attack destroyed the enemy, also place one corpse pile with the following keywords anywhere within short range and not overlapping other terrain. It gets hindering, and then has the Grim Reminder ability. Enemies suffer -1 to morale test rolls and +1 wound from failing panic tests while within short range. So Remorseless Examples kind of kicks off the vibe of Boltons right away. So we kind of have this mechanic coming back. Well, we'll talk about the first part, because the first part, I don't want to ignore this so much, because I feel like some people might be really holding Remorseless Examples to get that second part, and I understand, like, that's the part of the card that I like a lot. But being able to just like kill an enemy rank and throw a panic token out on the opponent is nice. I think that there might even be some times where people get so anticipatory over the creating the corpse pile that they might even forget about this part. So you want, like, Boltons are, it's not a shocker to anyone, they're going to be playing the panic game a lot, so throwing out panic tokens is going to be great, so that when you do those panic tests, you're more likely to get them, you have more chances for them to fail. But being able to place a corpse pile within short range of whatever it is that you've just destroyed is pretty massive. You're able to kind of slow down your opponents from coming into the unit that just killed one of theirs. So the piece trade gets really, it gets a little bit more difficult. Like, if you position right, you can make it so that it's going to take your opponent a little bit more effort to get through that hindering terrain. The Grim Reminder is going to be great as well. If your opponent's kind of clumped up, depending on what kind of scenario you're playing, the Grim Reminder is going to help enable a lot more damage dealing with the Boltons and all the panic tests that you can throw out there. So I think that this is going to be like a multifaceted card, in that you can play it to keep to be on the defensive, or you can play it to try and enable some more damage. Oftentimes you're just going to be doing both with those. So I find this to be a really interesting piece. The one thing I think I would caution people about is they try not to look for a scenario where you can turn this on super duper easy. Like, if you're going to be hunting like a Jorah Mormont on the wings and throwing this terrain down because he's an easy one to kill right away, I think that'll catch some people. But I think the ultimate goal with this card is to find ways to kind of set up a 1-2 punch. Like, the Dreadfort Archers within the House Bolton faction have that long range. They can do some good shooting damage. And then something like the Bolton Bastards Girls, they can get more damage themselves, as like they get to do the shoot and the charge, so they'll be able to have a good chance of being the 1-2 punch combo that kind of sets up Grim Reminder to happen in a pretty easy way, especially if you're using something like the swords on the tactic zone in order to try and help enable more damage, to ensure that what it is that you're trying to kill actually has a better chance of dying when you start compounding like the Bastards Girls with the Archers. So Remorseless Examples, I think, is a really like they're coming in hot with this first card. The next card up for us is going to be Harsh Punishments. This triggers at the start of any turn. You target one friendly combat unit and attach this card to them until the end of the game. They become panicked. While this card is attached, this unit's melee attacks always roll their highest attack die value and gain Sundering. Each time this unit fails a panic test, it suffers +1 wound. So, uh, Harsh Punishments, I think, is an interesting card for the Boltons. Like being able to just say that it's their start of the friendly turn, vow or whatever. It's the thing that stays on them throughout the entire game. Getting panicked early is not a big deal. You have ways to remove that through like the tactic zone, if nothing else. And the one thing that kind of blows about this is that the Bolton morale stat is not really high across the board, mostly sevens and a 6 and a 5. So my initial thought with this card is that it's basically just going to be tattooed to the Bastards girls' foreheads because they have a good morale stat, so they're less likely to fail the panic test that would come at them. And giving them Sundering is really great because they do have such great output. But if they're rolling, they'd be rolling right now. Their stat is 664, and then it would just be always 6. So it doesn't really like change a whole lot of their output other than Sundering. But I could see you putting this on another unit to just try and get better output on them. Like if we were like even the Cutthroats, I guess like they're 764, so like their drop off isn't so steep right away. So I'm gonna be interested to see kind of how this one plays out. I think that it could be something that just goes on Flayed Men as well. So it's a lot of the like repeat offenders of things that take buffs really well are going to be the ones that take advantage of this card. And it's not to say that I mean to start the conversation of this card with like the negatives of it, but I think that it does add so much more to the output of the Boltons, considering they don't have access to Sundering right out of the box. Like they might need to head over to the neutral pile. But I think that Harsh Punishments is a really good card. The failing panic tests and having your unit take an extra wound isn't really that big of a deal when you're going to be rolling your highest attack die value all the time anyways. So if you have some decent defenses or the ability to fuel a unit back up to make sure they stick around so that Harsh Punishments affects you throughout all the turns in the game, is probably not going to be too hard to do, but I can almost see this really sticking to those two units that I had mentioned that really appreciate this buff of being able to always roll highest attack die and gain Sundering. So we'll see how this one shakes out, but I have a feeling it's just going to be really stuck on Bastards Girls and Flayed Men. Still an amazing card. I'm not disappointed by it, just more so like worried about what could happen in the future with it. Next up, we have the House Model card, Our Blades Are Sharp. This triggers when a friendly unit is performing a melee attack before rolling attack dice. This attack gains precision, and if the defender's panicked, this attack may also re-roll any attack dice. So Our Blades Are Sharp gives me, or it kind of puts two of my favorite things together. It's precision and re-rolls. So most of the models within House Bolton hit on 3s. There's a couple that hit on 4s, so it's not, but they're like, it's not the biggest deal in the world. They're more kind of defensive. Maybe one's defensive, offensive, but a lot of the Bolton models that are more aggressive hit on 3s. And if you wanted to be spicy, you could put Brienne in one of those units. As long as you've got your swords or your combat zone, then you're able to get your +1 to hit to be hitting on 2s. But if I'm hitting on 3s and I'm locked in combat and I'm fighting someone who's panicked, I always want to be fighting someone panicked as a Bolton player. But being able, I would easily fish for 6s if the armor was high enough, right? So like I'll pick up my dice, re-roll them. I just think Our Blades Are Sharp really plays into this like reckless lifestyle of like precision's going to be there so we can make sure we get through your armor, which means that we're 100% going to trigger a panic test. It's probably the best thing about this card is that with precision, if all you're really trying to do is make sure you get to the panic part of the attack, picking up dice and re-rolling them is going to be great for you, getting those extra chances to try and make sure that you're automatically going to trigger a panic test. I think like Our Blades Is Sharp seems very simple when you first look at it, but it enables so many other things within Bolton's faction. If you're like by a Grim Reminder corpse pile, or you've got Fueled by Slaughter, you're 100% going to get that as long as you crack one of these 6s. So I think Our Blades Is Sharp as a namesake card for the House Bolton faction is going to be really great, and I'm really looking forward to getting to use it on the table. Next up, we have Sadistic Games. This triggers at the start of an enemy turn. Your opponent chooses one, and then you only select targets after they've decided to make a choice. One mode of this card is target up to 2 enemy combat units. They become panicked. The other mode is target one engaged enemy. It suffers 2 hits plus 1 hit for each remaining rank in all friendly units it is engaged with. So sadistic games is a fun one where I enjoy the idea of giving my opponent a choice in these cards with 2 different modes. It's kind of just a fun thing to do, but your opponent allowing 2 units to become panicked is extremely going to enable the playstyle that the Boltons have. But then this other mode that lets you kind of take some or do some extra hits to a enemy unit that happens to be engaged with a couple things is an interesting one. I think that sadistic games might not be there will be times where this just kind of feels like a bit of a dead card, because if you don't have any engaged enemies, then you're not really going to be able to get the use out of it. But you should hopefully have something engaged at the start of an enemy turn when you decide to use this card. I think other than that one little nuance where you could basically brick the card if you're not engaged with anyone, I think this one's pretty good. Enabling Bolton playstyle with panic is awesome. Your opponent isn't going to want that to happen, but if you happen to have a unit engaged and then maybe you have a couple things in there, like I don't think the Bolton's playstyle really like lends itself to dogpiling, but if you've got like House Bolton Blackguard kind of holding as center and then having something like Flayed Men or Cutthroats charge in, then I can definitely see where you'll get that multiple engagement thing going on, especially since I feel like Boltons do have the ability to clear through enemies quickly if they're really keeping with the momentum of the game. I'm not going to say that Boltons are a tempo faction like how I like to claim that Greyjoys are, but they definitely have the ability to make the peace trades quite asymmetrical with the type of damage they can do with panic. So overall, I think that Sadistic Games is a good card, and you just have to make sure that you time it right. I know oftentimes people are going to want to get this out early to try and panic some enemy models early, but definitely like there will be points where your opponent's kind of picking both of these are bad options, right? Because like they won't want units panicked, but if you have a unit that's close to, or an enemy unit that's close to dying, they aren't going to want to take these extra 2 hits to try and force some damage through. It's an interesting card, but I don't know if its like impact is going to be as great as I'm hoping it will be. I think I'm kind of putting on some like rose-colored glasses on this one, but you know, it's either going to be really cool or just really meh. Or I guess it could be really bad too. So Sadistic Games is just a really strange card for me. I like it. I'm not saying there's anything innately wrong with it. It's just not the one I'm most excited about. Next up, we come to Cruel Methods, which I'm going to say has got my probably most pedantic nitpick of the deck. But at the start of any turn, you can target one enemy combat unit, and you can expend 1 panic token from that unit. If you do, you choose two of these 3 modes. First mode is that enemy becomes vulnerable. Second, that enemy becomes weakened. And then finally, 1 friendly infantry unit in long range restores 2 wounds, and this card can be selected multiple times. So my nitpick about this is that in my universe, when I see a bullet point that is offset from 2 that are above it, it means that it is a subset of the one above it. So this card makes it seem like that enemy becomes weakened, and 1 friendly unit within long range restores 2 wounds that can be selected multiple times. Like that's my, nitpick over the framing of the card, or the spacing, the margins, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't seem quite right to me on why they chose to do it this way. But I am quite certain that final one with the healing is its own separate mode that you pick. So I really enjoy Cruel Methods because it's an extremely flexible card. You can take a panic token from a unit that maybe you don't need it. Maybe they're on their last legs and you think the combat that you're going to be putting into them is going to be able to take them out. So you're not going to really get a lot of use out of that panic unless they, wake up with a horseshoe under their pillow and decide to survive an attack of 7 dice when there's 1 dude left in the unit. So you can change that panic token into a vulnerable token so that you can get through that heavy armor, or you can change it to weaken because you're more worried about the offensive capabilities that opponent has more so than trying to get the damage through. And in a pinch, if you're in a combat where you don't feel like you really need to be winning it, you're able to go ahead and restore a full rank to a unit if you want to. I think Cruel Methods is a really cornerstone card for Boltons and is going to give them a lot of variability instead of really putting them in this corner where it's like we're going to be all panic all the time. I think this is one of the first cards we've seen where, or so far at least, where there's a little bit of the control coming out in Boltons, which I won't say that they're a control faction per se, but I think they do have some control elements, and some of their commanders can kind of make them lean one way or the other. But having the ability to have a little bit more control or manipulation of your own tokens to make sure you can see the outcomes you want is going to be really important in Bolton. So I think people are going to start, if they're lukewarm to cruel methods, I think they're going to really warm up to it as time goes on and they start playing with it. Keeping on theme with this evolving form of control kind of coming out within the Bolton's cards, we have a flayed man has no secrets. This triggers when a unit is targeted by an ability or tactics card. You can expend one condition token from an enemy in long range of that unit. If you do, cancel the effects of that ability or tactics card. So the fun thing about this is that the unit that gets targeted by the ability or tactics card isn't the one that has to have the condition token on it. So this gives you another layer of flexibility. And I think your opponents are going to have to be very mindful that this card exists in your deck. It's not so like game breaking. I guess it could be like I'm trying to make a comparison between like Counterplot, because Counterplot is so intense. Like it shifts the game so much that you can't play your cards with abandon while not thinking about your opponent potentially having a counterplot to back it up. And I think a flayed man has no secrets is almost like it's a much more like it's a reliable version of counterplot. Not that counterplot isn't reliable now or anything like that, but maybe it's just my old errata brain hanging around instead of coming around to this new world of Lannisters. But being able to spend a condition token from an enemy within long range of them, you should easily be able to make that happen with the way that you can get condition tokens out, not just from the tactics board, but there's plenty of ways to make that happen within your tactics deck or on your units as well, or your attachments that come with them. And you're just able to cancel the ability or tactics card. And a lot of times those can be extremely defensive, and you can shut your opponent down from being able to keep a unit that they were really expecting they could with that defensive ability, or you're able to keep one of your units around when your opponent tries to unload a really offensively powerful card on them. And it's card or ability, so you have tons of flexibility there too. I think a flayed man has no secrets is going to be burned into people's memories when they end up getting hurt by this card, because I do think it's going to be a pivotal piece within the House Bolton faction. I know that I'm extremely excited to start playing this card and messing with people's plans when they think all I'm out to do is just like kill, maim, and enforce panic checks. Really amazing card. The final card for the House Bolton Tactics deck is going to be Fear Keeps a Man Alive. This triggers when an enemy fails a panic test. You target any number of friendly units in long range. For each wound caused by this panic test, restore that many wounds in total across these units. So Fear Keeps a Man Alive is really it's a reminder for yourself to make sure that you start stacking all of these buffs and debuffs for panic. Things like the grim reminder from the corpse pile that gets put down where they're inflicting an additional wound. And then you have multiple ways of getting intimidating presence within a Bolton list, so now you're getting another wound on top of it. You know, if only we could borrow the Silenced Men for their little aura of extra damage on panic tests, they'd be in 7th heaven. But so if you're swinging that by 4, and then the unit that's attacking happens to have Fueled by Slaughter somehow, which I don't know if you can actually... Yeah, you can, because now Ramsey can give that out as influence. So, like, say you got, like, Roose Bolton running around with his intimidating presence, and he's being influenced by Ramsey. You have that next to your Grim Reminder corpse pile. You're getting an additional +2 wounds on a failed panic test. So let's say they rolled a 2 on their failed panic test, right? So now it's 4 wounds from that. And Roose Bolton's unit gets to heal 5, right? 5 from Fueled by Slaughter. And then you can choose a couple units around you to end up fueling up ranks. That's one of the things that I really like the most about this card, is the ability to just, like, you can kind of spread out the healing as you see fit. It doesn't need to be just this one unit or just the unit that's attacking. I think it's like a neat version of Fealty to the Crown, right? So Fear Keeps a Man Alive is going to make it so that your units that are a little bit more squishy can still stay effective. Remember that House Bolton Cutthroats have that 764 attack stat, so if they get just out of that final rank, they go from 4 to 6, and that makes them a lot more deadly and dangerous as the game goes on. So I think a Fear Keeps a Man Alive is going to be one of those cards where people really bemoan the moment that gets played on them, especially if they are getting multiple stacked debuffs on Panic. And I think like that's an interesting topic to kind of discuss with Boltons maybe at some point in the future. The idea that panic tests or panic damage can sometimes feel really like it's like a negative experience in Ice and Fire because it just does so much extra damage. But I think that it's great that the Boltons get to kind of lean into this playstyle. I'm hoping that as time goes on, it doesn't feel like they've kind of cranked it way above the level that it should be performing. But overall, I'm really excited about every card in this Tactics deck except for maybe Sadistic Games, but it's still kind of cool. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. I know it's been some time since I've produced any kind of Ice and Fire content, and it's not for a lack of love for the game or a lack of love for content production. I really do enjoy both of those aspects of my hobby, but I think between like home life and work life, the time to like I had to kind of pick and choose. Like, do I enjoy the hobby as itself, like painting and assembling and basing and doing all the fun stuff that's real kinetic, or do I have to sacrifice that time to make the YouTube stuff? And up until recently, I kind of put my flag in the I want to actually enjoy my hobby as it is on the table, how it's meant to be enjoyed, in quotes. But now I've kind of like things have leveled out a little bit, and I'm really excited to start making more content for the game. I'm interested to see what people are thinking of the Boltons. I'm not the end-all be-all of Ice and Fire, so if you have opinions that differ from mine, I'd like to hear about them. Also would be interested in seeing what folks would like me to do next. There's a wide open world. I think I'll probably do like some Bolton Commander list videos or something like that soon. But I'm just looking forward to seeing kind of what happens with things as time goes on. It seems like a Song of Ice and Fire isn't going anywhere anytime soon. We still have a nice constant stream of updates and constant stream of model releases. So I'm excited to start getting back into talking about things again. So let me know where you'd like me to pick up, and we'll look forward to seeing you all in my next video.